Welcome back to TYT Sports, everybody. A panel you've seen before when it comes to NBA content. On my left, technically your right, Coach Nick, BBallBreakdown. Please make sure to go check him out on YouTube. And now Periscope podcast. We'll get to all of that in the description box below. Please go check it out. And Francis Maxwell to my right. Also avid basketball fan.
Huge basketball fan.
Huge. Deadline day has came and went, and a lot of people were upset with not major deals being had on deadline day. But in terms of this past week, we cannot say it was a lighthearted deadline because a two-time All-NBA second team player, almost dropped a 5x5 on a new team yesterday.
It would be like going and doing your Christmas shopping like 4 or 5 days before it and picking out all your gifts and then waking up on Christmas morning and not having any new gifts and being like, what the hell is this? Because I didn't get it on the actual day. That's my problem right now, is I never got anything to surprise me.
Look, in Scotland, you get gifts on, what, the 21st? Or 26th, you have Boxing Day?
Yeah, we get a lot of gifts around there. But my point is, you got one of... my point is, you had one of the best trades, one of that a lot of people were touting for a while with DeMarcus Cousins moving, and now you have a combination that everyone's going to be excited to see. So if you're complaining it didn't happen on the day, then I think you're just looking for something to complain about.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm sure your thoughts initially when you see the deal, and we have, obviously, as I aptly titled it, Kings get fucked element.
Okay.
Because it's technically, granted, if you watch Buddy Hield yesterday, everyone's going to think, well, he might be the next Steph Curry. So the deal in itself, the biggest of this last week, Caspi, who's now out for 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thumb in his first game playing with the Pelicans, and DeMarcus Cousins and the Kings again receive Tyreek Evans, Langston Galloway, Buddy Hield, and 2 draft picks. So in terms of the initial reaction, were you shocked by this? Were you surprised by Vlade Divac? What really went through your head when you saw this happen?
I don't think I was surprised. I think they've been waiting for a long time to, make this trade happen. And so when they finally pull the trigger after Vivek is up and down and back and forth, you never know what's going to happen. That's always a bit of a surprise. But let's not forget, Buddy Hield out of the draft probably had a little bit of a Steph Curry, comparison going on. I know I would have compared him to Steph Curry the way he played in college. So certainly not maybe the cornerstone of a deal for DeMarcus, but we saw last night evidence of taking out that kind of, the DeMarcus Cousins, whatever you want to call it, he just sucks all the energy out of everybody. When that's gone and they can play free and now you can get like Willie Cauley-Stein going all over the place, they might end up being better.
That's, it's a good point because when we discussed that trade the day it happened, we're both not ones to jump on this is the worst deal of all time because it's unfair to ever criticize a deal in that moment. For all we know, Cousins flakes out in New Orleans and nothing ever comes of it. For all we know, they signed Chris Paul in the offseason and all of a sudden they're one of the top 5 teams to compete with, at least on paper. But for both of these, the Kings won by 16 and the Pelicans lost by 30. It doesn't mean much right now because there's new players and new places. And as you pointed out from your breakdown video of how Davis and Cousins are going to play together, using Ajinça as just imagine it being, it's just funny because you say like, no one's ever said really, just imagine Ajinça being DeMarcus Cousins,
right,
or vice versa. But as for the rest of the deal, there's a lot more to discuss because there was a couple, I don't know what we call them, like mid-level movement, some interesting deals that were done still on deadline day. As you saw, Lou Williams to the Rockets, which we'll get to later, has an immediate impact for their scoring. Now they can shoot even more threes. But we'll start with the Mavericks getting Nerlens Noel because one of the things I'm interested in, at least from your perspective, Coach, is for one, Andrew Bogut to the 76ers, Justin Anderson to the 76ers, and the top 18 protected first-round pick, which according to ESPN Stats and Info has a 99.8% chance of being a top 18 protected first-round pick. But Nerlens Noel, in the 76ers system, we had too many centers. It was crowded. We weren't sure if it was going to be Noel or Jahlil Okafor. I feel as if we haven't seen what Noel is capable of because he's been kind of hindered by Sixers play and what they've gotten. Is the Mavericks a place where we could see him develop into the prospect that he was coming out of college?
No doubt. I was very upset that we didn't get a chance to see Noel and Embiid play together. They got 8 minutes together, I think, all season long, and that would have been a really potent thing for them. But without question, if there's anyone in the league who can figure out how to get Noel to get his potential, it's going to be Rick Carlisle. And they have some wonderful pick and roll packages for him that are going to open up all sorts of lobs to the rim. So we're going to see some really exciting stuff there. And then we've seen him on defense too. He could be that guy. And so I have no doubt how Harrison Barnes went from being a guy, in the Warriors who people liked that he was okay, to, a legitimate, scoring forward. I think the same thing's going to happen to Noel.
We're kind of overlooking the fact that I think Bogut going there, he's Bogut. It's a player that you're going to always put in a group as a player who knows what to do when he's on the court. He's somewhat of a veteran. And I think that maybe is something that's been overlooked for the 76ers. You mentioned there, they had all these centers, but how many veterans did they have in there to kind of guide these younger players through it, And it's a small thing, but when you have Joel Embiid taking control as to what he's doing, but still having limited minutes, it's not a bad thing to have someone in there who's been around the bush, an NBA championship winner, to maybe start to guide these younger players through this process. Because as we see Ben Simmons going to come back and start to share minutes on the court with Joel Embiid, hopefully.
Take that, but probably not till next year.
Exactly, but I'm not saying it at the moment. I'm talking about in the future.
In the future.
We're already seeing an improvement in this in this team, and I think that it's not a bad trade to look to let one of those younger players go. Whether you've got a point of view as to whether it would be Noel or Okafor, either or. I just think that it's a good thing to have someone in there who's going to start to coach these younger players and start to really get the best out of them. So it's not a deadline day breaker to see Bogut go somewhere. I mean, the guy's been getting traded around since he left the Golden State Warriors, but
the only problem with that is I think they're going to end up buying him out, and so he'll be a free agent.
Yeah.
And as a result, he's going to get to choose where he wants to go. They just figured out that the complicated rules, he could actually go back to Golden State,
Warriors,
which was apparently not a possibility for a long time. So however they figured it out, he can go back there. And I got to tell you, I think he would. Because
we've seen the great Zasaf Pachulia and what he's capable of so far this season. But I mean, in all seriousness, there's the big conversation of if the Pelicans make the 8th seed and they click together. That is not a team that even if you're the Golden State Warriors, you really want to face because, look, you're facing two all-NBA talented players, and regardless, you can't take that lightly. I don't think the Warriors take anybody lightly. I don't think any team in the NBA takes any other team in a playoff situation lightly, like we saw with the Blazers in last year's playoffs, and they're coming up, unfortunately, this year, not the same. But in terms of the Mavericks, what's so interesting to me about this is they pick up Nerlens Noel. Deron Williams could be out the door. Yogi Ferrell gets his 10-day contract, turns it into a 2-year contract after not being drafted, if I'm correct, out of Indiana. And by the way, we can throw up the element in post-production with the best sisters you can ever imagine because they constantly walk around trolling him on the court with I Can Beat Yogi one-on-one shirts.
Oh, really?
Which is pretty funny. But that's just the developments of the Mavericks from the beginning of this season all the way till now it's almost an entirely different team that they're courting going through the last 30 games of the season. It should be interesting to follow them through, especially with, again, Noel, Barnes, Yogi Ferrell, everything changing around them. All right, so we can move forward because we have the Raptors getting... So Sullinger goes to the Raptors originally, and I thought that was such a great signing for the Raptors in the beginning of the year because I thought they needed some front court help, right? I think they needed some depth. I wasn't sure what he'd be able to bring to the table, going from the creative Celtics system to a not nearly as creative Raptors system is the way I'll go with it. They struggle defensively badly. They're pretty much on the bottom of the table when it comes to the defense. But now, I'm not sure. PJ Tucker, a lot of people were quick on Twitter to say, I like this signing. Did you like this signing?
Yeah, I like the signing a lot. PJ Tucker is a really, really tough guy, and I think he's been in obscurity in Phoenix. No one really knows what he can do, but he can guard LeBron. I mean, not that he's going to stop him or anything like that, but he's got a lot of strength. He's really tough, and he can score a little bit too. And he's just got a guy who's been around and he's not intimidated by anybody. And you combine him with Serge Ibaka, who they added also.
That's a big one.
And you have to say that the Toronto is up there. If they didn't win the trade deadline time, then they are second or right up there.
Right.
And you look at it as in terms of what it means for the players around them. We saw how frustrated Kyle Lowry was getting in his last press conference. When players like that start to vocalize their frustration because their office isn't making trades to help them push to that next level, because we know they have the ability. They have one of the best backcourts when they click. I mean, in what they were struggling with, as you mentioned, Coach Nick, was defensively. They weren't being aggressive enough, and they were allowing far too many easy buckets. And when you come up against the Cavs, which, in my mind, that's where they're looking to go to, is to eventually face them again in the Eastern Conference Finals, They need physical players to try and stop that lane, to try and stop LeBron James. Serge Ibaka is one that we know. He's got a great sense of physicality about him. He's a good, mature player. We know that from OKC. And this is another signing that's going to just make them a little bit more rigid, a little bit harder to break down, and allow for Lowry and DeRozan and those types of players to really step up their game and use their talent. And sometimes it takes a little change like that. Sometimes it takes a Tristan Thompson to come into someone like the Cavaliers and really just start to get those offensive rebounds and allow the space to free up for your talented players like Kyrie and LeBron.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. The Raptors, as we know, they need, as we discussed, physical basketball is one thing. They're good on their home court, but there's some other teams in the East that are going to make it a lot harder for them to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. One of those teams, the Boston Celtics, granted DeMar DeRozan probably likes shooting over a chair in Isaiah Thomas as he was getting ripped for in the last time the Raptors played the Celtics. All right, so there's one more that I want to go over because I thought the Thunder got better. First of all, I think Doug McDermott has been worth more draft picks in the history of any other player at such a young age. Doug McDermott has been traded for 2 draft picks and another 0.3 draft picks, and I think, and soon, probably in 2 years, more draft picks.
McBuckets.
Doug McBuckets is really making a name. But so, element number 7, Joffrey Laverne, Anthony Morrow, and Cameron Payne, all to the Chicago Bulls, making Fred Hoiberg's life even more interesting, to say the least. And the Oklahoma City, on top of getting that second-round pick, which isn't nearly as meaningful, obviously, as a first-round pick, but Taj Gibson, a veteran defensive player, we've seen what he could do with a Bulls team that was effective on the defensive end. And Doug McDermott, sure, an extra shooter who can maybe can be unlocked with a new system in the Thunder's team and what they want to do. Granted, they're going to be working with Coach Nick's favorite and clear-cut MVP candidate, Russell Westbrook.
I will say this: Doug McDermott will probably look as good as he's ever had alongside Russell Westbrook. So that's a good thing. And the thing we saw with McDermott in Chicago was that when he played with the starters and like with good teammates, he actually did do very, very well. But when he would get sidled with the other bench players who were not creating shots for him off the penetrating and kicking, he didn't do so well. So he might start. Like, why not throw McDermott out there? And with guys like Adams and Robertson out there, then he could be a defensive liability, but still be hidden a little bit. So I think it's actually a good trade for both, believe it or not.
Yeah, I almost feel bad for Fred Hoiberg because I feel like he's had to deal with so many different pieces, and that's part of this game. You have to be able to adjust if you want to be a great head coach in the league, you got to be able to adjust on the fly every single day. That we know. But some coaches have had it, you can say, a little bit easier with, I guess, more respectable management. Now, you're originally a Bulls fan?
That's true.
From Chicago, too?
From Chicago.
So, as you've seen the transition from the greatest, decade of dominance in basketball to kind of just praying for Derrick Rose's knees at one point, and now you get this. I said at the beginning of the season, if the Bulls were really underperforming, that Fred Hoiberg would probably be on the hot seat. A lot of people thought that was crazy. But now you're looking at a Bulls team, and to me what this means is there's a chance Jimmy Butler's gone in the offseason. And if that happens, Dwayne Wade could opt out of his contract, and then you're left with a rebuild. Is that one thing that you would look towards for this offseason, or do you want to keep Jimmy Butler at all costs and try to keep Dwayne Wade around if he's affordable for the next couple of years?
I don't understand why anybody would not want to keep Jimmy Butler on their team. He is a foundational piece because of his toughness, the way he plays defense. He's a guy that can guard LeBron. And if you want to get into beyond the Cavs into the finals, you have to have at least one guy that can do that, maybe even 2 to guard LeBron. So he's a guy that I would always want to keep and build around him. I don't know if it's clear to me that the issues he has with like teammates and with coaches is really a cancer kind of a thing that maybe like a DeMarcus Cousins. I don't think it's obviously that bad, but there's rumblings. But I think that they have something here. But with what Hoiberg has done this year with this roster, I think 500 is about as good as you're going to do. I mean, there might have been 8 other scenarios you could have coached, and again, 500 is the best. So I feel bad, again, for Hoiberg. I'm watching what they do on offense, and I know for a fact it's not what he would have wanted to do, how he wants to play. And this might help. Laverne can shoot a little bit. Cameron Payne might be a shooter if he gets consistent minutes. And certainly Morrow when he does, too. So this might actually loosen some things up for him.
They've all gotten... it seems like it's underreported experience. Those Thunder players have been around and played against some elite competition at very high levels of basketball, and I'm talking about the playoffs and the Western Conference Finals and stuff like that. And that goes a long way. They've got more experience than those who have never touched a playoff series. So yeah, they got more experience than that of DeMarcus Cousins, unfortunately, who's seen mostly under 30-win seasons. Francis, is there any one player you would have liked to see moved at the deadline? Would you have liked to see a Blake or a Carmelo or a Paul George to the Celtics, anything like that to make it a little more exciting, or were you content?
I think the DeMarcus Cousins trade was one that I was looking to see what was going to happen. I think
get him out of there.
I just honestly felt quite bad for Anthony Davis. We followed him, especially with the way he started the season, and I felt that to give him a good chance at trying to create something, he was either going to have a big name trade come in, or he was going to have to look to head elsewhere. So I wasn't expecting any monumental trades. Paul George was touted. You were talking about it yesterday.
I wanted it.
I don't know. I still like Paul George at the Pacers and everything that we've followed him through and his overcoming of adversity a couple of years back. I like the idea of building it around something that he has been a crucial part of. And I always see the Pacers as a team that's just needed a couple extra pieces, and they could be a great team. They could be right there. But then again, this was a conversation I thought of before Kevin Durant, and as we talk about it, it's changed everything. It's changed everything in terms of what are all these guys who are on the cusp of greatness thinking when they go to bed at night. They're like, oh, I want my office to get this guy in and help me out. But then they think, maybe I could just leave. And I know that sounds a little shallow, and you're like, oh, we want a player to build things around.
What are you talking about? Paul George already said it a year in advance. If you want to believe Sam Amick's report, and again, I would love to hear this from Paul George. That was my whole takeaway from yesterday. Besides obviously a lot of movement and how teams got better, some teams got worse, was if you're a Pacers fan, you should be revolting against your best player, because I think it's absurd. I think it's absurd for any player to say to an organization, "Oh, I'm hell bent on going to the Lakers in a year, so you better get a team around me to do it." I don't think that's a way to motivate your team. I don't think that should ever be leaked to the press. I don't think that's anything that should be just directly said to a reporter. You got to think smarter than that, because if that's the case, why wouldn't the Pacers try to trade you right now so they get something in return instead of losing you in free agency? Granted, I think Larry Bird still could possibly outshoot Paul George. We'd see what would happen as but it's fun though. We got Magic and Bird, and everybody's still negotiating trades as if it were 1985 would be like the height of that series.
We got to get Barkley a GM somewhere so we can get them in a room. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
I don't think he'll be welcome at the Cavs.
He might be getting
soon.
replaced by Chris Bosh. Who knows?
I don't think he'll be at the Cavs.
not on the Cavs?
No, well, him and LeBron's little beef. I don't know if he'd be welcome to help him.
I like the beef. I'm telling you, man. With Chris Bosh on TNT, that they could court a five-person team that can compete. KG's there now. He can still play, man. Yeah. Chris Bosh obviously wants to. Is Sheed there?
Yeah, he's doing a thing with KG in that
that's
area,
right, that
whatever.
Sheed.
Oh yeah,
that's so awesome.
Hilarious.
That's one of the biggest.
What a team.
Trade when Sheed went to Detroit. That was one of the biggest trade deadline blockbusters I've ever seen, and obviously it turned out pretty well for the Detroit Pistons.
Pretty good.
All right, comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe. Make sure to check out Coach Nick. It's youtube.com/BBallBreakdown, correct?
That sounds right.
That sounds right. All right, on Twitter, it's all the same. It's all in the description box. There's a lot of great videos. Did you get to the LeBron three-point video?
I'm doing that right now. We're going to look at why he's shooting like 9 points better than he did last year.
He teases on Twitter for like a week, and then he's like, well, DeMarcus Cousins got traded, so I'll put that on hold.
Yeah, right. Do people really want to find out how LeBron's shooting better?
No, because they don't want to accept it. There's nobody who wants to accept
that's what
it.
It is?
That's what it is. Because they're going to use all the years before this to be like, that's absurd, and then they'll watch the video and they'll be like, all right, sure, but I don't want him taking that shot in the finals.
I just think people don't want to like wrap their head around that this guy's still doing things better as he gets older, you know. But it's similar to any great athlete. They look to try and further themselves and adapt things that their body won't be. They don't rely as much on their body to do, you know.
Right.
He's relied on his physicality for so long. Maybe start working on other things as he moves forward to help him still be the best.
You can jump out the building at 32. I
Yeah,
can't imagine
so
at 40. All right, comment below again. Like, favorite, subscribe. We'll see you next time.